my name is Aysha Tengiz and I work as an illustrator. Thank you so much for all of your brilliant questions. I'm going to try to get through as many of them as I can. So I was born in Brighton and I moved to a very small island in Turkey when I was about 8 years old. My dad's Turkish, so he wanted us to get closer to his family there, and I lived there for about 5 years. We had a lot of freedom. I could ride horses, we had lots of animals, and I didn't really go to school, so it was a pretty brilliant childhood. And then I moved back to the UK when I was 12 to a small town in the West Midlands, so like the countryside. And then I moved to London for university when I was 19, and I've lived here ever since. What inspired me to become an artist / illustrator? I think it was being surrounded by art all the time. In particular, picture books were always a really great influence on me. I loved picture books so much. I would just sit and look through them all. And I think that because I grew up in quite a rural area, I never felt embarrassed to keep reading them as I got older. So that kind of love for those pictures and those books always stayed with me. Cartoons that I watched when I was a kid, I loved cartoons and I still love them now. Powerpuff Girls, Cat Dog, Scooby-Doo. Now I still watch cartoons and animations for both kids and adults. Two of my favourites would probably be Avatar and Over the Garden Wall, which is a really great series. Some of my favourite picture books when I was young, I've still got them here. If you can hear a rumbling, I work underneath a railway arch, so there's quite often trains going up overhead, which does sometimes make the roof crumble a little bit onto my desk, but it's all part of it. So I still have a lot of the picture books that I loved as a child with me here. I still like to look through them to get influences for my work. Firstly, Megan Mogg, which is a fantastic picture book, full of colour, and I think that you can kind of see how this influenced my work now. These like big block colours, this like nice black line work. And I think this was what made me realise how important colour is for picture books and for art. I remember looking through this as a child, and this night scene always was one of my favourites. It kind of had such a sense of mystery, particularly this one as well with the on the hill. I felt the atmosphere of the picture so vividly, so strongly, even though it's just 3 colours and very, very simple artwork. And so I think that goes to show how strong an impact colour can have. Another one, you probably know it, Funny Bones by Janet and Anna Nahlberg. And I think this is a really great example of how humour can be used and how books can be funny and characters can be very lovable. These characters are skeletons. They should be a bit scary, but instead they're very silly and fun and well loved. So this is another one of my favourites. And then as I got older, I started to discover other artists and authors that I didn't have in the house when I was growing up. I think my mum just picked the ones she liked, and so I got to find ones that I liked. And one of those was Tove Jansson, who wrote Moomins. Her characters are so beautifully drawn, it's so funny, and this is a really great book because it has lots of cutouts and again has such a great use of colour, really, really simple. They look like prints. So I love this. And Richard Scarry, who I never knew growing up, and I got put onto his art. This book has actually been scribbled in, unfortunately, but the work is still good. I got put onto him because a lot of people compared my work to his, saying I influenced by him, and I wasn't. But when I discovered his work, I was after that. It's brilliant. Lots of animal characters, very busy drawings. This one's great with like a boat. Lots of different scenes you can pick out. So yeah, those are a collection of some of my favourite. So I became an artist through never stopping drawing, I think is the best answer. I drew a lot as a child, and I then went on to study it at school and at university, and I decided that I really wanted to work as an artist, and so I worked quite hard to start getting jobs in illustration when I graduated, when I finished my degree. And from there, I gradually got more and more work until I was finally able to quit the part-time job that I had, because I did work in a shop for a long time, so I could afford to eat, which is important. And then I could finally work full-time doing illustration, which is fantastic. So I draw with a collection of lots of different things, but mainly I draw digitally. I'll get my iPad, it's tucked down here. This is currently my biggest tool. I work digitally because the turnaround time for a lot of my projects is very fast, sometimes just a few weeks, sometimes a few days. And so here you can see my current drawing. You probably can't because actually the screen might be reflected. But when I work on my own stuff, I normally use, got all of my pens here. So these are a collection of, I don't even know what's in them. Pens, pro markers, and I think these ones are pencils. And I think these are probably more pro markers because I do love them. Yeah. I don't normally use pencils and crayons that much. I'm definitely much more of a pen girly, and I do love paint. So I work a lot of the time with acrylics or gouache to create paintings for myself. I've got a few pieces here. Acrylic, gouache. The gouache creates this really nice kind of flat paint on the page. It dries really, really matte. More acrylic. Sharpie or Posca? Posca. I love Posca pens. This is my Posca pen collection. So I've got them all here and I use them when I paint. They're particularly good for mural work. If I need some extra details, the black line work, it really does the job. I have a few sketchbooks. So this is my current one. I like to cover them in stickers. Got about 3 in rotation and they are very messy. So it has all my lists and my sketches and ideas. I'm not sure how clear this will be in the camera, but it is not interesting. It is really just all of my brain thoughts scatter down onto the page, and it's how I kind of work stuff out. And then I do have one which I have tried to keep a little bit neater for drawing ideas and doing some kind of pen drawings, but it is gradually getting more and more chaotic as it goes along. So we'll see how long I can keep that one nice and neat for. Probably not much longer. My favourite thing to draw is definitely animals. I love drawing animal characters. There's a word called anthropomorphism, which is an extremely long word, which means putting a character to an inanimate object or something like an animal. So sort of human characteristics. So maybe they're on their hind legs and they're wearing clothes and they're talking to each other. And that's the kind of thing I love to do. So creating all these characters from animals. We've got a few of them up here. Dog. He's kind of still quite spidery, but in my drawings I do like to give them clothes and all the different types, birds, mammals, fish, and as soon as you've broken down the barrier and made them into people, you can do anything because there's no rules anymore, and I love that. I'm so glad you guys enjoyed Baboo the Unusual Bee. This is my copy. It's been on the shelf, so it's a bit dusty actually now. So I was really lucky in that this was written by a fantastic writer called Ladybird, and so because she came up with the story, the illustrations came to me really easily because I already had her story and her words to go with it, and we worked together on thinking up ideas. I would draw some sketches and thoughts of what I kind of envisioned, what I saw Baboo as looking like, and then she would come back to me alongside the publisher and tell me what they thought and if they needed any tweaks. We wanted to change a few things. He was initially not quite so fluffy, and that was their idea, and he's come out quite nice with this little fluffy body. I also spent a lot of time outside. I would walk through woods and parks. I would get down on the ground to have a look at what the world would be like if I was as small as a bug, because the size of everything is so different when you're that small, and what the world might look like to give me ideas. With the colouring, we also decided the colours would work throughout the day, so it begins in the morning and goes through the day, and then the sun begins to set, and that gives us a lot of colour variation to kind of create a mood throughout the story. I like making art right here, so this is my studio. I've got my desk and all of my books. I have my laptop up here normally and all my pens. And it's a shared studio, so I have some friends around me as well, so I'm never by myself, and it's normally quite busy. I've got here very early this morning, so no one can hear me talking. And this is the best place for me to create art. It gets me out of the house. Yeah, it's pretty fantastic. So the King's Cross piece took me about 3 weeks, I think. So I started with visiting the space. I walked around and took lots of photographs. I spoke to a lot of people there, and from that I was able to start sketching up some ideas, and I drew it all on my iPad. I sent the client, which was Google, the draft, so that's like the first stage of the artwork. It's when it's still a little bit sketchy, isn't coloured, and then they approve that and then let me go forward with the final illustration. And I was actually about to travel to Japan when I got the job, so I took my iPad with me and finished up the illustration on the aeroplane and in a park in Japan. So I think that's a really good example of how nice it is to have such a flexible job where you can work anywhere in the world. So yeah, it was pretty great. What do I like about living in London? It's a train. I love the busyness of London. I love how many people there are, the different communities. There's so much going on. You can walk down the street and discover a new shop or a gallery or a pop-up exhibition. And those are the things that I really enjoy about London, how there's always new things to discover, and it changes so frequently that you can never stop exploring. My favourite museum is the Horniman Museum in South London. It's not too far from where I live, so I get to go there quite a lot. I love the gardens, the butterfly house, and my favourite part of the museum is the merman. So if you ever visit the Horniman, look out for the merman. He did have his own special display, but he got demoted and now he's next to the fidget spinners, which I don't think is very fair on him because he's brilliant. I currently don't have a pet. I love animals, so I would like to have one, but I unfortunately don't have the space or the time to look after one. But when I was at university, I did have 2 pet rats, which are pretty good pets, and I would love to have rats again. What makes me happy? I think because I draw for about 7 hours every single day, I still get a lot of happiness from drawing, but it's not how I unwind anymore. It's not how I relax. And the way I now do that is through science, which I always hated as a kid. I hated science class and everything about it. And as I've got older, I've started looking into space and learning lots of different science facts. My brother is a very clever scientist and he has taught me a lot about it all. And now I have a really big interest in space and quantum physics and all of this mind-blowing stuff I thought had no creativity attached to it, but it is in fact one of the most creative things I've ever explored. So there we go. That's how I get all of my joy. Thank you so much for all of your wonderful questions and for taking the time to ask me.